It's my pleasure now to introduce our moderator for the evening. He's the chair of the Political Science Department at Rhode Island College, and he's a longtime SNA board member, Tom Schmaley. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the candidates tonight. We have, as Dean mentioned, the candidates who are in contested primaries, 2 Republicans, 4 Democrats, in alphabetical order on our stage. Ken Block is the president of Simpatico Systems Software, ran for governor in 2010 as the candidate of the Moderate Party. Ellen Fung is the mayor of Cranston, Rhode Island. Todd Giroux is a contractor. He also ran for governor in 2010 as an independent. Clay Pell, formerly director of strategic planning on President Obama's national security team. Gina Raimondo is the treasurer of the state of Rhode Island, and Angel Tavares, the mayor of Providence, Rhode Island. My first mistake, mayor of Rhode Island. As Dean mentioned, we have questions that were created by the board and some that have already been submitted by community members. We'll begin with a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, going from my left to my right. When we get to the questions, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. Our timekeeper in the front row will hold up cards that tell you how much time that you have. When she holds up the one that says stop, I will hope that you will stop very quickly after that. It's not a debate. We ask that you address the audience rather than each other. We have not set aside any specific time for rebuttals. If one of the candidates were to say something specifically about one of the other candidates that was inaccurate or to which they took objection, you can ask me for 30 seconds to rebut that, but we hope to keep that to a minimum. My job is to ask the questions and get out of the way. We trust our audience can analyze and evaluate your answers. But if a question doesn't get an answer, I may jump in and ask for specifics. And we will take a short break after the first hour here today. So we can begin with the opening statements, again, from beginning with Mr. Block.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you to the Summit Neighborhood Association for hosting this evening. This is how you do politics in Rhode Island. You do it at the local level, you do it at the retail level, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to tell you about my plans and ideas for how to fix Rhode Island. I've been all over the state of Rhode Island over the last year, and I can't tell you how many thousands of people I've spoken to. And the consistent message that I hear from Rhode Islanders is that they want Rhode Island's problems fixed. They love Rhode Island, they know what its potential is, but they really need to see us fix our chronic joblessness. They need to see Rhode Island achieve its full potential, and that's why I'm running. I'm running to solve the problems that have lingered for so long here. We need resolutions to that. The way that we bring jobs back to this state is what I want to talk to you about tonight. And over the course of the next hour and a half, I'm sure the questions that will be asked will allow me to tell you in depth about the plans that we have and what we want to do to fix it. Whether it's consolidating local services like emergency dispatch, making Rhode Island look and function like most other states do it, fixing the broken DMV where you have to pack not only a snack but a lunch to get your license and registration done. 15 years ago, what do we all used to call Massachusetts? Taxachusetts. And Massachusetts changed how they did business. They became a place where you didn't want to be as a business owner to a place where you wanted to be. We can fix what's broken in Rhode Island. We can achieve our full potential. It's not rocket science. We need political courage. We need a specific plan. And it has to be workable and feasible. You have to be able to pay for the programs that you're going to propose, and for every program I will propose to you tonight, I will tell you specifically how we can pay for it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here in front of the Summit Neighborhood Association before this very important gubernatorial forum. I'm Mayor Alan Fung, and I'm a Rhode Islander born and raised. In fact, I grew up on the south side of Providence. Proud graduate of Classical High School, proud graduate of Rhode Island College, where our moderator's current chair of the Political Science Department. And then I went on to Suffolk Law School and decided to come back to practice in Rhode Island. And for the past 3 terms, I've been the proud mayor of the great city of Cranston. And during that time, we've really had the opportunity to stabilize our city's finances. And for a 3rd year in a row, some of you might have heard, we announced that we did not have to raise property taxes. And we've taken a lot of hard decisions during that time, during my office, where we've done a lot of innovative things, from consolidating services, achieving pension reform by sitting across the table from our unions and retirees, and shaving in just this 1 year alone over $6 million of our annual required contribution. Moving 2 major unions into 401ks and out of the costly state-defined benefits pension programs. Real reforms, real results. But more importantly, we've partnered with our business community to create an environment where over 1,000 new jobs have been created in the city alone during my administration. And the #1 issue facing our state is jobs. For far too long, Rhode Island has had the worst unemployment rate in the country, and that's not acceptable. And I'm running for governor because I've got the track record of putting people back to work, real results that you can see in Garden City, Chapel View, and other places all throughout Cranston. And I know I can do the same for Rhode Island. And that starts with a serious discussion about reforming our tax structure, cutting through the red tape, making sure our students are coming out with the best education possible and ready for the workforce. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Todd Giroux. I'm running for governor of Rhode Island. I'm the working class guy with great ideas for this working class state. If you remember the banking bailouts from several years ago, it was all created with the 2008 Economic Stabilization Act. And so these bank bailouts that were authorized through the TARP program, so this repaid TARP was supposed to go back to communities for small business loans, green projects, and infrastructure, and that didn't happen. There's $400 billion out there for the states. I'm the guy saying we need to bring all these inputs into Rhode Island we can find. And so with our fair share of $5 billion for Rhode Island, that could be our Commerce Fund, our statewide low-interest revolving fund for small businesses and property owners. People get their windows, their furnaces, hire their contractor. It's a jobs plan that's not on the back of government. If you notice in the back, we have these signs resembling the old-fashioned WPA messaging. So, you know, I have ideas for the state to create the first Office of Inspector General. We've recently seen today, you know, we've these last few days and weeks and years, we've had so much collusion between elected officials and the legislature, and so that's why we need an Office of Inspector General. With a part-time legislature, we need full-time oversight. I have ideas for lowering the state sales tax so that every business in Rhode Island can say we are regionally competitive. So I'm a local guy for this working-class state. I was born in Woonsocket. I went to LaSalle Academy for high school, URI for college, and so, you know, I just say, look, I'm talking to the 50,000 unemployed in Rhode Island, the 100,000 people that are going to have to move through foreclosures in Rhode Island. We have to grow our economy with ideas bigger than the problems we have, and so thank you so much for the Summit Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Tom, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight, for caring about our state and our future. I am not an elected official. I served as an officer and a prosecutor in the Coast Guard, as a leader in the Department of Education, and as Director for Strategic Planning on President Obama's national security team. My service in the Coast Guard taught me a valuable lesson, and that's if we want to change our destination, we have to start by changing the course that we're on. We need solutions-oriented, pragmatic leadership, skills I learned working on foreign and domestic policy in the Obama administration. We need a real plan that we can put into action. And that's why I proposed a plan I can put into action beginning my first day as governor. I will provide a world-class education for all of our students, not just for some, by making sure that Rhode Island becomes the first state in the nation where we provide every high school student with the opportunity to take part in an internship program. I will tackle the burden of student debt with my Hope Scholars program, because the burden of debt is holding back a generation. I will support a comprehensive women's equality agenda to fulfill the promise of equal pay for equal work but also to strengthen protections against domestic violence and make sure we protect a woman's right to choose. And I will fix our crumbling roads, bridges, and infrastructure with my infrastructure rehabilitation and replacement program. But more than anything, what we need are fresh ideas and a new perspective. And that's why, as I put together my plan, I did it by listening, by bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders and making sure that we are building on the incredible work of many of the people in the community here. That is how I will govern as well. And that's why, when I am governor, we will invest in our people, listen to our people, and build a stronger future. Thank you.
Good evening. It's terrific to be here. Thank you to Tom, and thank you to all of you. This is a very important election, and it's always amazing. We did one of these last night. Every night it's a packed crowd, and so hats off to you for caring enough to be here. I'm originally from Smithfield. In fact, my mom still lives in the house I grew up in. But now my husband and 2 kids live right here in the Summit neighborhood. So on any given Saturday, you might find us in the Lippett Park, where my kids love to play, or at Seven Stars. And I have to thank you for the work of the Neighborhood Association for keeping this neighborhood so vibrant. It's amazing. The Hope Street Merchants Association, hats off to you. It's what keeps us going. I am running for governor because this state has given me so much opportunity. I grew up in a typical middle-class family, used the public buses, public libraries, public parks, and I've had amazing opportunity. But that opportunity is slipping away. We learned last Friday, highest unemployment rate in the country, tied with Mississippi. You know, when I came into office, I inherited a pension crisis, one of the worst funded pension systems in the country. And people said, oh, you can't fix it, the politics are too tough, the General Assembly's too tough, but we did. We put our mind to work and we fixed the problem. And now I'm running for governor to take that same brand of leadership and sense of urgency to get people back to work in manufacturing jobs, in tourism jobs, in infrastructure jobs. I have a robust plan to create tens of thousands of jobs to fundamentally turn this economy around. Some jobs right away in infrastructure and tourism, and some jobs over time in manufacturing. We have to make things again in Rhode Island. Before I ran for office, I ran a business in downtown Providence, and I worked with dozens of small businesses. And together they created over 1,000 jobs. Throughout my career, I've delivered results and jobs, and that's what Rhode Island needs now. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be back at Summit Commons. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Professor, as well, for hosting us. And I want to thank the Summit Neighborhood Association. I have spent a lot of time with you over the last several years, and you're one of the best neighborhood associations that we have here in the city of Providence. And I remember spending time here celebrating 100 years for Ann Kay and Elise Lemieux, I also remember coming here early on in my administration and talking with you about what we were facing in the city of Providence. Some of you were in the room that night when we talked about the challenges that we were facing. Rhode Island is struggling, and I think we need a governor who knows what it's like to struggle and to succeed. And that's been my life story. I was raised by a mom who worked in factories to raise 3 kids. We lived in public housing on the south side. I went to our public schools and had a chance to get an education. And I've been very, very fortunate to serve as your mayor for the last 4 years. And when I took office and confronted a $110 million structural deficit, I told you that day when I came here and talked to you about it that it wouldn't be easy. But if we came together, we could do it. And everyone did come together. All of our unions, whether our police union, fire union, city workers union, teachers union. I worked with all of our universities, our hospitals. I worked with our retirees. I worked together with everyone, and we moved the city forward. I'm running for governor because I believe we need someone who has the knowledge of what it's like to struggle, but also the ability and experience to get things done. I know that we can grow our economy and create jobs, and I have a plan to do that, focusing on people. I know that we can improve education, and I'm proud of the progress that we've made, and I know we can make more progress as a state. I know we can do better, and that's why I sit here today as a candidate for governor, and I ask for your support. And I think you've seen what we can do when we work together. I hope you give me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you all. Our first question, we'll begin with Mayor Fung and then move to the right and back. Imagine for a moment it's November 5th, the election is over, and you've won. Now we would like to know, congratulations. Now we'd like to know, what will you do in your first 100 days? What will be your priorities for that period? What do you hope to accomplish within that period?
The most important thing that any chief executive is going to have to do to turn this economy around is to surround themselves with the best talent possible. I did that when I first got into office in Cranston, tackling the financial mess that we inherited from the prior administration, but also the multi-million-dollar cuts that have come from the state at the time. And I'll tackle our state budget, which is going to be the biggest priority that the next governor, hopefully it's me, is going to deal with. I am going to put together a budget that calls for a $200 million tax reform plan that reduces our corporate tax, reduces that minimum corporate tax that impacts many small business owners, raise the limit on the estate tax to the federal exemption, and also get our sales tax down to equal Massachusetts to stop the flight. That will send a message to business owners here that we have not forgotten about them, but most importantly, sends a message to those employees outside the state that we are a competitive tax environment and open for business. We've done that in Cranston, working with business owners, cutting through and streamlining business, and that's what I'll do as governor too. That tax reform plan, as well as streamlining the business process, will send a message that we are serious and open for business, and that will help create a lot more jobs and put people back to work. We've got the track record in Cranston, over 1,000 new jobs. This should be happening in every city and town throughout the state.
Thank you. Mr. Giroux, your first 100 days.
Thank you. I have to get through a primary. That's what I have to do. I need to, so I'm laser focused on a jobs plan for Rhode Island. And that means that, so in other words, this WPA jobs plan I talk about, we have just 40 days in this election, somewhat 40 days, to communicate that we need these federal inputs. My first day in the office, I want to call in our congressional delegation, and we need to have a meeting that says, look, me winning this election means that 100,000 Rhode Islanders say, we need extraordinary help in Rhode Island. And we need to go after this repaid TARP money. These programs expire in the year 2018, okay? And they're trying to keep the program quiet, but the fact is that we just finished all these signatures getting, for the, be on the ballot. And people remember TARP. They know what repaid TARP was supposed to do as far as going back to the communities for small business loans, green projects, and infrastructure. And I want to make that happen. So I have to get through this primary so that I can beat these two guys, so I can be governor, so that we can petition the U.S. Treasury to get our fair share of repaid TARP. And with $5 billion in Rhode Island, we're going to get our Commerce Fund, our statewide Commerce Fund. We're going to be able to create trust funds of investment for healthcare, for infrastructure, billion-dollar trust funds that create interest and take serious pressure off the state budget, cities, towns, and property taxpayers in Rhode Island. We need to change the dynamics fast in Rhode Island, and it's the quickest way to do it.
Well, I've put forward a comprehensive and detailed plan that I can begin putting into action my first day as governor. It starts by looking and investing in the areas of growth and competitive advantage for our state, the maritime economy, and I will create a port authority for this state. Then, building on the knowledge economy and the creative economy, the tourism economy, which are our natural advantages. But also, looking at education, making sure that we have the Hope Internship Program, being the first state in the country where every student has that opportunity, tackling the issue of student debt, and in the first 100 days, signing executive orders on a comprehensive women's equality agenda to deal with the issue of pay equity in particular, and to sign an executive order dealing with the influence of money in politics. Because the politics we have had have held us back. It's why I'm not accepting contributions from PACs or state lobbyists, and I'm proud to be the candidate who's not doing so. And it's something that I'm going to tackle with an executive order as a state government as well.
Thank you. Thank you. The first job of the governor is to put a team in place that is diverse, that has some new faces, and that is willing to innovate and think differently. and it's exactly what I've done as treasurer. And that might mean ruffling some feathers and getting rid of some of the insiders and bringing in some professional talent, but that is job number one if we're going to move this state forward. And it's exactly what I've done as treasurer. And then everything I do as governor, especially in that first year, is going to be with one goal in mind: to get people back to work. That is the job of the governor. And as I said, I've put forth a robust jobs plan involving infrastructure. I have a plan for a statewide infrastructure plan which will actually save money while improving roads, bridges, and schools and put people to work. A marketing plan for tourism, which I'd like to act on right away. And I also will prioritize a vision for the Route 195 land. That's been, it's there, it's available, it is ready now, and it's time to take action. That is an opportunity for a governor to work with the mayor to really capitalize on that opportunity to turn Providence into an innovation capital and create jobs, particularly manufacturing jobs in areas of our strength: healthcare, design-based industries, advanced manufacturing. And if we do all of that, we're going to change the tone of state government. It's time to set a new tone at the top of possibility and action for the people of Rhode Island.
Thank you. The first 100 days, I'm going to be focusing on jobs, jobs, jobs. First thing I want to do is Training Rhode Island, a program that focuses on workforce development. Let me explain to you what I mean. We have 50,000 people unemployed according to the Governor's Workforce Board. We have 10,000 job openings right now in the state of Rhode Island. 10,000 job openings right now in the state of Rhode Island. If we can fill those jobs with the people who are unemployed, we can really take a big bite out of unemployment, our unemployment rate. So that's important to me right away. I want to make sure we invest in infrastructure, the Ocean State Infrastructure Trust. You are in the neighborhood and you're seeing, I know it's not been easy, I've heard a lot of the complaints over the last several months, but I promise you it's going to be worth it. I promise you it's going to be worth it, and it also puts people back to work. The Ocean State Infrastructure Trust is a plan that I have to invest $800 million over 15 years. I want to do that right away. Let me also say this. I want to work right away on getting us moving in terms of attracting people to our state. We can attract more people to our state. If you recall, last year we had a program, Come Visit Us in Providence. What are you waiting for? And that has helped us attract more people to our state. Last but not least, we need to change the focus of our Commerce Corp. We need to make sure that we start focusing more on Rhode Islanders and Rhode Island businesses and helping them grow, helping them succeed, because they will stay here, they will hire here, and if we invest in them, they will invest in us. Too often we focus on attracting from the outside. I want to grow from within. Thank you.
In the first 100 days, we're going to be very busy. We're going to assess the DMV. We'll probably end up stopping the computer project that's a decade late and $8 million over budget. We're going to fix the DMV. We're going to fix it for real. You shouldn't have to pack a lunch to go there. We're going to go into the Department of Labor and Training, make that much more user-friendly. If any of you had to interact with it, you know that it takes a long time as an employer. You could be on hold for hours trying to get through to the Department of Labor and Training. We're going to get that place organized as well. We're going to begin the process of putting $80 million a year back into the bank accounts of working Rhode Islanders by fixing the broken temporary disability insurance program. We're going to draft the legislation to fix our broken unemployment insurance program. We're going to draft the legislation to make the 195 land a 2% corporate tax zone. Because the only way we're going to put private industry jobs on that land in towers is to make that land desirable in an economic climate that is conducive to attracting businesses. We don't have that right now. The only way to bring jobs to this state is to make our state economically competitive with Massachusetts. That is the overriding theme of what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. That's the only way to bring the jobs back that we so desperately need. And in my spare time, I'm going to take every legislator out to either breakfast, lunch, or dinner in the first 100 days, because the only way to get things done in this state is to make sure that they're on board with the vision that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you all. State aid to cities and towns was dramatically reduced during the recent recession and has not returned to its previous levels. As a result, cities and towns are forced to resort to raising property, car, and other taxes to make up shortfalls. If you're elected governor, would you increase the level of state support? If so, how much and how would we pay for it? If not, what is your message to property owners who will continue to face tax increases on the local level?
I want to reinstate the homestead exemption here in Rhode Island. It's an incredible burden placed on Rhode Island. We are increasingly, all the burdens are decentralized here in the state. We do need to build a proper state budget and don't shed all the problems onto the cities and towns. So I know that reestablishing the homestead exemption is a great step towards making homes more affordable for all of Rhode Islanders. So I do hinge a lot of my ideas here on the federal inputs of the repaid TARP. I can't stress enough that when we have these proper investments for healthcare and for infrastructure that create interest, so for example, for every $1 billion of TARP we get, and I'm after $5 billion for this state, we're going to have $85 million a year in interest. So a healthcare trust fund, an infrastructure trust fund, a Rhode Island sovereign fund, a commerce fund for the small businesses and property owners. And the fifth component is that the repaid TARP had a provision for pensions. Any statewide pension that lost $1 billion before 2010 was to qualify. So I want to be the guy that put that $1.2 billion back into the state pension system. And so if we create $250 million of interest, okay, that's going to take pressures off the state budget, allow us to build a proper state budget, take pressure off cities, towns, and especially the property owners of Rhode Island. Thank you.
Between 2008 and 2012, non-educational aid to cities and towns was cut by 70%. I'm committed to reversing those cuts. I think that this is crucially important because when we take away the money that goes to cities and towns, they of course have less money to invest in public education and public safety. And what we need to do is make sure that cities and towns have the resources they can get from the state so that they don't have to jack up property taxes as we've seen. Instead, I think that we should be investing in our cities and towns so that we can begin to take into account the huge inequities that we see across this little state of ours. By relying less on the property tax and more on state aid, we are going to be able to promote equity in our schools, be able to work better together as a state, and be able to reduce the amount of property tax and car tax that people have.
I do think that we need to reinstate more state aid to cities and towns, and I also think that we need to accelerate the funding formula for education, which would help certainly urban localities. Is this okay? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we need to, we passed a good funding formula, but we instituted it over 10 years. It needs to be accelerated. You know, we're letting our kids down. We have to get that done. And I do think we need to give some money back to cities and towns. However, what I would like to do is to use some of that additional aid to cities and towns as an incentive to make the tough choices, to finally restructure some of the way we do city finances. For example, pension systems. Many of the city pension systems are still very poorly funded. Here in the city of Providence, it's about 30% funded, and that's not an exception. You know, it's many cities and towns. That hard work has to happen, and when that happens, it can come with more state aid. Streamlining permitting processes in cities and towns. It needs to happen. It should be online. It should be quick. Let's provide an incentive. If you have a better regulatory environment, if you're a more friendly place to do business, if it's easier to do business with City Hall and get a permit, then you'll get a reward with some more state aid. Same thing with consolidation and shared services. We need to incentivize our cities and towns to become more transparent and efficient.
Thank you. You know, this is why, part of why I want to be governor, because I understand what it's like to be a mayor. And I want the treasurer to know that we have made tough choices here in the city of Providence. And we've made them with our pension plan. And many of you who are here have worked with us to make that happen. And it wasn't easy, and we had a lot of people who were very unhappy. The pension plan went from 57 to 32 over the course of 20 plus years. The expectation that it's going to go from 30 all the way back up to 57 quickly is not realistic. And I believe she knows that, and I think you know that too. We have our permitting online in the City of Providence as well, so I want to make sure that people know that as well. We do need to restore our funding to cities and towns. I'm glad for the question, because that's been one of the biggest challenges that we've had, not only in Providence, but across the state of Rhode Island. And the people who end up paying for it are all of you. All of you. As a mayor, I've had to make difficult choices. I like to say the tougher and toughest. But we've done it always with an eye toward the future and toward having really comprehensive change and structural change. That's how we eliminated a $110 million structural deficit. That's how we avoided bankruptcy. That's how we've made progress. We need to do the same at the state level, and we need to understand you can't have a healthy state if your cities and towns are on the brink of bankruptcy.
Unless the state aid is going to come in the form of monopoly money, I'm not sure where it could come from. We have a $150 million budget deficit in the current year that we're in right now, and it increases in subsequent years to exceed $400 million 4 years from now. So as you hear all these ideas and these plans tonight, you have to ask yourself, every time you hear an idea, more state aid sounds fantastic. But if you can't pay for it, you can't produce the state aid. Consolidation and shared services is a vital and necessary thing that all of our communities need to do much more strongly than they are right now, because the cost of local government is far too high. The car tax, the hated car tax, and the property tax, these are symptoms of local government not doing things efficiently. Why is it in Rhode Island we don't have a regionalized call center for the whole state? There are plenty of metro areas where 1 million people are served by a single emergency dispatch system. In Rhode Island, we have probably more than 50 local dispatches, right? It's this sort of behavior that costs us dearly. As an example of paying for what we have to pay for, most of our state workers fill out a paper-based timesheet here in the year 2014. That's a 5-foot stack of paper every week. It costs us, we estimate, as much as $20 million to process all that paper. We should be doing that computerized, and we need to take that $20 million and spend it on something more important than pushing paper.
For me, it is going to be really difficult to restore all of the aid back to cities and towns. I think we all realize that, because we are, as a state, still facing budget deficits in the out future years. But what we can do in the interim to help cities and towns, and what I have been fighting for during the time that I've served on the executive board of the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, which is an advocacy group of mayors, town administrators from across the state, is to provide reforms and reliefs to many of the mayors and town administrators to manage their budgets. And if you give them those reform tools to manage their budgets, they can then start having a serious discussion about reducing property taxes, reducing car taxes. And when I'm talking about relief, they need relief in the form of pensions. Having enabling legislation passed to move and allow the flexibility to move towards 401ks. They need the flexibility to enable them to freeze COLAs for those local plans that are really in trouble. To fight against the expansion of binding arbitration, which has cost many cities and towns in adverse decisions. Relief from unfunded mandates that many legislators have done. Minimum manning requirements. But most importantly, to allow them the flexibility also to talk about innovation and consolidation working together. These type of mandates can lead them to manage their budgets and have a serious discussion about reductions.
Thank you all. A national Gallup poll last April found that almost 60% of Rhode Islanders have little or no trust in their state government, the second lowest in the country after Illinois. Rhode Island continually suffers from the perception of corruption, backroom deals, and the widespread misuse of public office for private gain. In June of 2009, the Rhode Island Supreme Court effectively gutted the State Ethics Commission And in this most recent session of the General Assembly, a bill to restore the Commission's powers failed to pass. How would you use the office of governor to weed out corruption, restore Rhode Islanders' faith in their state government? Mr. Powell.
Well, people have lost faith in the government of this state. And as long as people have lost faith, as we know, it's going to be very hard to do any of the other things that any of us at this table are talking about. And that's why restoring that confidence is essential. I'm starting as a candidate by tackling the connection of money and special interests in politics, by refusing to accept contributions from PACs and state lobbyists, because it is fundamentally inappropriate to take money from the very same people who are paid to influence the decisions the governor will make. That is why I will follow that up with an executive order as governor. It's why I support reform in making sure that the Ethics Commission, in fact, does have oversight over the General Assembly. And it's why I believe that we need fresh and new leadership that is not part of the system we've had, but that is instead going to bring a fresh perspective and a new vision for promoting the state. So when people think of Rhode Island, they aren't thinking of a state of insider politics or cronyism, or a state that's looked inward, but they're thinking of new leadership that is projecting, that is looking outward, that is bringing people back to this state and making things happen again. That's what new leadership can do for the state of Rhode Island.
I think we all feel a little depressed when we hear that, but that's a good thing because we can never accept that, because that's one of the reasons that's holding Rhode Island back. We cannot have a government that works for the few. Government cannot just work for the few well-connected insiders. We need to move this state forward in a way that leaves no one behind, and government needs to work for everybody. We need comprehensive ethics reform, and we need it now. We need a more transparent legislative session and rules related to the legislative session. We need ethics committee control and oversight over the General Assembly. And we need these things right away. And as treasurer, I have committed myself to transparency. When we did pension reform, every meeting was in public. All of the data was put on our website, and it was a very transparent process, 36 hours of public hearings. As treasurer, I've instituted a policy, the most strict policy of any treasurer has ever done. I don't accept campaign contributions from investment managers that do business with the pension fund. And I also went after disability fraud. We hired an outside investigator. You know, the disability system is there for people who need it, but there is no place for fraud and no place, you know, if we allow one instance of fraud, it weakens the system for everybody. So it's time to move Rhode Island to a place of transparency and effectiveness and results and openness for everybody, not just the few.
I subscribe to what Justice Brandeis said many, many years ago, that sunshine is the best disinfectant. We need to do everything we can to make sure to shine a light on what's going on in government, make sure people know what's going on, and have an opportunity to gain and earn your trust and respect. And I think that sunshine is extremely important. So we need to continue to do everything we can to use technology, put as much as we possibly can online so that people can see it right there and get the information, have it right at their fingertips. In Providence, we had a data portal that we're improving every day. We're improving every day and we're trying to get better, but it's there. For the first time we put that so you have data right there and you can see more and more online. We are now streamlining some of the council meetings. We're doing different things to try to make sure that you have that information online. In addition, we have to restore Ethics Commission oversight to the General Assembly. Absolutely, very vital. And I will use the bully pulpit as governor to make sure that that happens. The other thing we have to do is we need to hold people accountable. We need to hold people accountable. When I ran for mayor, I said, I can't guarantee you that I will know everything that the 6,000 people who work in the city are doing, but I guarantee you if they do something wrong, I will hold them accountable. That's what the governor needs to do. That's what people need to feel is happening in order to regain trust in our government.
I have a 10-year-old daughter who is probably the most politically aware and competitive human being on the planet. She came home from school this year and told me that she was the first Block to hold elected office because she had won a seat on her student council. And she reads the paper, and she said to me one day, "Dad, what is it with Rhode Island politicians?" And I didn't have an answer for her. We've had some real shocking stories this year. We have a disgraced Speaker of the House whose home and his office was invaded by the FBI, the IRS, the state police, and rumor has it, the CIA, and that the Navy moved a nuclear sub up the bay. We have the state police running the Cranston Police Department after all kinds of problems being discovered there. And just yesterday, the chairman of the Democratic Party stepped down in a swirl of allegations and a big mix-up with a state rep in going after some state contracting. How is it possible in Rhode Island that a state rep can even compete for a state contract? That shouldn't be. Many other states prevent that, but somehow we don't. Yes, we need the Ethics Commission. I will push for a law right away to make it illegal for state senators and reps to compete for state contracts. We need to lead by example. We need to put the infrastructure into place. We can't continue to be the state that's the who do you know state. It kills us. We have to do things on the merits. We have to make sure entrepreneurs can compete fairly for contracts.
Could I use quick 30 seconds on that little cheap shot that I just caught?
Okay, well,
And then I can answer
Sure.
the ethics one. On that state police cheap shot that I just caught, I want everyone to know, and everyone's read the paper, I was the one that asked the state police to come in and do not only an investigation with respect to the parking ticket issue that we experienced, but also a top-to-bottom review of the entire police department to give me an objective review of what's going on, and we're moving forward. So it wasn't as if there's some criminal investigation going, because there's not. So I just wanted to make that clear. But sorry, can I move on into the important question on the ethics in government? You know, I think we're all tired, and we're all losing confidence in public officials. And when we hear stories, even yet this week, about insider-type deals or allegations of any type of collusion in the bidding process, you know, like what we've heard about with past politicians going to jail, it shakes and erodes the confidence. And in Cranston, we tackle that. One of the first executive orders that I put forward was an ethics executive order that really ensured that there was integrity in government. And I even asked, to the point when I put that out, that our state ethics commission come in and train our directors. And then even each of the different departments that had touch points with the public to know what the ethics rules are. And that's the same thing that I would do as governor too. Put that executive order in place, make sure that our people are properly trained to know what the rules are and not have the same way of doing business. But what I also support is a constitutional convention to ensure that some of the things that we've talked about, getting our General Assembly back under the Ethics Commission control is of paramount importance. But so is in term limits. It shouldn't be right that our general officers have term limits, but the General Assembly can sit in perpetuity for many years. We always need fresh blood. And lastly, we need to restore some power back to the governor's office, and give the governor at least a line item veto. I have that in Cranston. If we can yield it effectively, it can help solve a lot of problems.
I covered a lot of ground in my opening statement, and so forgive me for repeating myself. But I do want to establish the first Office of Inspector General for Rhode Island. I think that should be our first line of defense for waste, fraud, and abuse here in the state. I'd like to see that position, if we could kick that off within the Lieutenant Governor's office. I think that would be a fantastic use of the resources we have in the executive branch of government. So within this Office of Inspector General, I do want to conduct the first of its kind jobs and vendor study here in Rhode Island. We need to find out where the money's going. And, you know, we often, we see the quality of our projects, whether it's a new I-Way bridge that's has a tremendous amount of structural cracks and flaws in it. We spent a year and a half trying to polish out all these, you know, problems in the new bridge. But the fact is that the quality of the concrete was under question even when the project was continuing, yet they kept taking the steps forward. So I think there are times where, for example, the DOT, they need to have a state office holder, an ombudsman, or call it an office of inspector general, but we really need to be able to provide help to all state departments to get the quality of purchasing that we deserve and what we're paying for. So, again, to repeat, jobs and vendor study within the Office of Inspector General, and let's kick that position off within the Lieutenant Governor's office.
Thank you. We have a question about K-12 education. Everybody knows that the quality of public schools affects business relocation decisions, property values, and the level of dependency on social services. You're running for the governor of the state of Rhode Island, but this is the neighborhood association, and one of the things we hear over and over and over is people moving out of the city to the suburbs or going to private schools to get what they think they need in education. Meanwhile, the leaders and the activists fight over the Common Core and the high-stakes testing and teacher evaluations. What would you say are the most important things that we should be doing, the first things that we should be doing to improve the system of K-12 public education in the state of Rhode Island, but especially in our cities where the difficulties are greatest?
So this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about because I have two kids at Vartan Gregorian in Fox Point, a soon-to-be second grader and soon-to-be fifth grader. That's impossible for me to believe. But everyone deserves access to a high-quality, free public education. And it shouldn't be just if you live in the suburbs, or it shouldn't be if you live in Barrington. It should be if you live everywhere, anywhere. It shouldn't matter your zip code. And we can learn from our neighbor to the north in Massachusetts. It's not money. In Massachusetts, they spend about the same per pupil as we do. But the results are much better. And here's why. They have leadership. I am a proponent of the Common Core. We need to set our standards high. A high school diploma needs to mean something. We can't let kids out of high school without the skills they need to get a job or go to college. And the Common Core will help us do that. And then we need a curriculum which is broad, not just what we learned when we were young. They need to learn more today. And that curriculum has to match the standards. And then we need assessments that are fair. It feels like for me, my kids are tested every other day. That's too much, but they do need to be tested, and teachers need to be evaluated. And most of all, we need to treat teachers like the professionals that they are. No one knows better than the classroom teacher what the student needs to succeed, so we have to hold teachers accountable, but we got to give them the support that they need in order to be successful.
First of all, Professor, I would change the way that we look at education, and I've started to do that in Providence. You say K through 12. I say cradle to career. In Providence, two-thirds of our kids start kindergarten behind on national literacy benchmarks. Imagine that, two-thirds. When I found that out, one of the things that we did was focus on those first 3 years of life. And those first 3 years of life are vitally important. We're seeing a lot more focus on that. Hillary Clinton is focusing on it with Too Small to Fail. We're focusing on it. In fact, we won Bloomberg Philanthropy's Mayor's Challenge, beat out 304 other cities to bring back $5 million here to Providence to stop focusing on those first 3 years of life, making sure that our kids start school ready to learn. We need to make sure we have universal pre-K. It is the best investment we can make for our kids. Start early. We need to make sure we have full day K. We do in Providence, but we need to have full day K across our state as well. We need to make sure our kids are reading at grade level by third grade, because it is one of the most important predictors of future success. We have Providence Reads in Providence, focusing on that, something that I started as mayor. We have to focus on cradle to career, not K through 12. Cradle to career. And I want to make sure that the whole state focuses on that, because we can have the top education state in the country if we do it. And I know we can do it.
I've talked to fourth grade teachers in Pawtucket who have classrooms of 26 children with not one of those children who should have been in fourth grade. They had educational achievement of kindergarten through second grade. Now when you have a classroom stuffed full of children like that, that fourth grade teacher can't be successful at his or her job at moving that class into fifth grade as accomplished fifth grade. This is the core of the problem in our educational system. I do support high-stakes testing, I do support teacher evaluations. But when you high-stakes test a high school junior or senior, and you find out they have achievement at a fourth or fifth grade level or sixth grade level, the only thing you've learned is that you've blown. We need to test children in kindergarten, identify those children at risk, and apply the resources necessary to bring them up to grade as quickly as we can. The transition from third to fourth grade is key. Children entering fourth grade must be able to read. That must be high stakes. If they're not independent readers, we need to keep them in third grade and make sure that they can make that transition. Now, we can't afford to have a whole bunch of Clay Pell-sized third graders. So the answer to that is to make sure we have a plan in place to make sure that we can move those kids into fourth grade as accomplished fourth graders. This is the answer. Sorry about that, Clay. I had to pick on somebody. So, but at the end of the day, this is how you fix what's broken in Rhode Island's educational system. If we get it right in the earliest grades, that helps us move ahead for success in all the other areas.
No rebuttal necessary.
Excuse me, Ben, I need to close myself. That was pretty fun. In all seriousness, education is a very serious issue that confronts all of our students and their parents. And I'm a very big supporter of innovation and accountability in our educational system. One of the things that I am proposing is a dramatic change to the way how we govern our education system. Right now, in many cities and towns, and even the state, I know Providence is a little different, there's a separation between our schools with government. We've got to stop breaking down a lot of these silos. And what I've called for is having the Commissioner of Education working together with the governor, hopefully it's me, setting that one overall tone and platform and mission and vision for the state of Rhode Island. That includes making sure that our students are ready for the workforce of the future. Because it's not about K through 12, it should be about K through 16 and out into the workforce. And the only way we're going to do that is breaking down those silos, having the commissioner work with many of the different department directors that touch upon business and the private sector businesses themselves to ensure that the curriculum aligns with what is needed in the workforce. That's going to get them ready for the jobs of the future when we get them here. Next, I do support making sure that there's high-performing charters as an option for many parents. And I'm a big supporter of Merrill Academy. I sit on the board of Merrill Academy. And those test results are astounding that you're seeing coming from the Blackstone Valley. And this type of innovation, extra help, provides what is needed for many students, particularly those in the urban area.
So, students and parents, when they have choices in education, it really builds the individual skills development. You know, we don't have to make them go to school. They need to want to go to school. And one of the things I talk about is how friends I've met in Australia 25 years ago said, we finished high school with a sum of money to go on to higher education. And I think that the students should have, by the time they finish the grade school years and they're in the beginning of 9th grade, they should know they have $1,000 to their name to go on to higher education. And I think by the time they graduate high school, they may have $2,000 in that account. I think we'll see the high school graduation rates dramatically increase if they have that horse in the race. So other ways that we can dramatically change the education structure today is using the arts programs that everyone wants to eliminate. These STEM to STEAM programs, in other words, these arts classes is a great place to teach students. Look, you're not just learning subjects, you're learning a technical career. In Europe, there's many technical schools, and they're focused. They bring in community role models from employers, and they can have that pathway to career and know what they want to do for a job. So I really think that we can cheap way to integrate the science, technology, education, mathematics is to expand the STEAM programs in the schools, and students will want to go to school. Thank you.
So the question was what we will do differently in education. I will restore creativity to our educational system. When I served in the Department of Education, I saw how different parts of the country were leading and how different parts of the country were falling behind. I believe that in many ways we have gone in the wrong direction. We have cut and reduced art, music, language, sports, after-school programs, the wraparound services that recognize that we have different types of students, different needs, different ways that people want to learn. This is deeply important to me, because all of my life people have told me how a Pell Grant helped them to go to college. What a difference in education makes in people's lives. Now I'm committed to making sure we have a world-class education with all of those diverse areas and subjects so that we can engage students, the HOPE internship program so students can get exposure to professional experience, and tackle the issue of student debt as well so that we can make sure our students are going from high school and into college. And across the board, I do believe in empowering our educators and allowing creativity and innovation, and I oppose the high-stakes testing as a graduation requirement, and instead want to make sure that we are supporting innovation and different ways of learning and expressing so that we have the different types of creativity and thinking and critical thinking that will help this state lead and innovate in the future.
Thank you all. At this point, we're going to take a very quick, less than 5-minute break. People can get up and stretch and get something to eat and drink at the table and give the candidates a breather. We're going to go now to some questions from the audience. I think I'm probably going to forget where I left off, but I think we're starting Mayor Taveras. These questions have either been emailed to us or given to us from the audience tonight. The first one's about green energy and green jobs. Senator Whitehouse got a lot of press recently by claiming that there were more green jobs in the United States than jobs in the coal and the oil and gas industry, a claim that was ultimately determined, at least by political fact, to be true. How do you think Rhode Island is doing in developing green jobs? In what ways will you advocate as governor for making Rhode Island a leader in green energy and green jobs while still growing the economy? And the questioner asks you to be specific.
Thank you. Thank you. I see Greg Jarrett here, and I'm going to bring him up to help me out with this one. Let me just say that how we're doing, we're not doing enough. We need to do more. That's the first thing. I have Preserve Rhode Island. You can read it on my website, angel2014.com, that talks about some of the things that I'd like to do in terms of renewable energy and promoting our environment as well. Let me just give you one example. In Providence, we did the Green and Healthy Housing Initiative. Green and Healthy Housing Initiative because it really worked on repairing homes, retrofitting homes, doing some changes to homes to provide a healthier housing for kids and have a better impact in terms of kids going to school because we saw that some of the absenteeism can be related to housing conditions. We got local people to work and at the same time bettering the environment. We have an old housing stock in the state of Rhode Island. Summit is not any different than that. I mean, you all know that as well. That's something I would like to see happen statewide. I want to invest in alternate energy, solar, wind. We need to do that here in the state. I was proud to see, and I supported the Narragansett Bay Commission's work to put up the wind turbines there in Narragansett Bay. And that was important to me as well. So there's a lot that we have to do. We have to do more. I have a plan, Preserve Rhode Island. I just talked to you about a couple of the things in it. It's hard to do it all in 90 seconds, but look forward to working with you to see our state become a real leader.
One of my two businesses is a solar-powered traffic signal business. We sell a motion-activated solar-powered device that sits at the intersections of recreational trails and public roads, and we're installed in 40 states around the country. So I have some pretty good visibility to alternative energy solutions. I have some friends who are very deeply involved in the transmission systems for windmills and things like that. I believe personally that it is important to pursue alternative energy as much as we can, and we need to do so. I think the challenge that we have, certainly in Rhode Island, is we are absolutely budget constrained. And I think that's going to prove to be a real stumbling block for doing a whole lot of in-depth investment right now, because quite frankly we're failing to invest in so many other areas as well. But one place where we do have money that's not being spent the right way is we're sending $12 million out of state right now to purchase hydropower out of state. And I'd like to see that money instead spent for alternative energy projects that are in state. If we have state dollars and we're spending them, wherever possible we should spend those dollars in our state as opposed to out of state. And those monies should be used to incent and pay for alternative energy projects that are here in state.
I would personally support any type of green projects so long as they compete with fossil fuel prices. We've got to be very careful about imposing further mandates and adopting any type of initiatives that would increase our dollar costs for many of the consumers. Right now, we have a lot of high utility costs already, and some of that can be tied to some of the projects that are going to be put forward into the future. I do not support the Deepwater Wind project. I think it is going to cost ratepayers too much more in the future. But that's not to say that I don't support land-based wind projects. There are different things that we have to be very smart about the projects that we support. Hydro is one area that I would support. You know, we have to find alternative energies and stop on the overall reliance on certain areas. But on also green, we have to just take a look and take a step back too. You know, we have to also talk about conservation and do what we can to preserve more land, because the more that we build, the more that we're creating more problems for us, whether it's flooding like we've seen in Cranston or any other communities throughout the state. You know, preservation of our property, buying through open space and keeping open space is important. But also, you know, many of these projects have to really take into consideration cost, efficiencies, and how we be smart for the future.
In the transition to a green economy, and we all want that, we all want more projects. So I've been in construction for 25 years, and occasionally we see a client invest in a geothermal well, for example. I think that's a fantastic solution for a lot of public buildings we have. So for example, so many of these schools, they have these furnaces that use $20,000 in fuel a month. It's unbelievable. So there's this technology out there called thermal depolymerization, and it basically turns trash into fuel oil. And you can buy a unit that creates 10,000 gallons a month for under $1 million. So I suggest putting several of these at our landfill. And so we can create our own way of generating fuel for so many of our public buildings. So I think in the process of going green, we're going to have to use transitioning technologies. And so you've also heard me talk tonight about infrastructure trust funds and commerce funds. So that's how people are going to be able to afford to invest in this energy efficiency. People are throwing money out the window through the old windows and inefficient old furnaces. So when you give that homeowner that low interest revolving fund loan, they can hire their hire the local contractor, and that's how we're going to create tens of thousands of local jobs very quickly. When we create our Rhode Island Commerce Fund, that's a statewide low interest revolving fund, encourage these thermal depolymerization units in our landfills so that we can, provide fuel to our public schools, and I think that's a fantastic solution as we transition to a green economy.
Rhode Island is the ocean state, and so we're going to bear the brunt of climate change as much or more than other places. I believe that this also presents an enormous economic opportunity for the state. And I think the fact that we have not been focusing on it is representative of the fact that we have consistently, instead of focusing on areas of competitive advantage, we've sort of forgotten who we are and what our strengths are as a state. I'm going to bring together the Oceanography Institute at URI, the defense sector, the boat building industry that we have in Bristol and Warren, our ports, our maritime economy, and make sure that we create and are part of the industrial response to climate change so that we really can create green jobs here. It's something that I saw in the Coast Guard and in the Department of Homeland Security, how other places around the country are beginning to lead. I want us to lead too. And it's why it's not just part of my environmental plan, which is extremely comprehensive, but it's part of my economic plan, it's part of my education plan to make sure that we are teaching environmental science in our schools, and it's part of my infrastructure plan to make sure that as we reach out to the Department of Transportation for resources, we're also looking to new sources of revenue, to the Department of Homeland Security, so that we can build resilient infrastructure that's going to last the 100-year storm. It's that type of fresh perspective that I bring from the experience of having worked in the federal government in a variety of federal agencies.
Thank you. The first thing we have to do is not deny that climate change is a reality, because it is a reality. And Rhode Island, being the ocean state, is uniquely vulnerable. We see it. We see the increased beach closures, increased temperatures, increased weather problems. So we have to become more resilient and adapt to the new reality. And being the ocean state, uniquely vulnerable, but also a unique opportunity. And specifically what I've proposed is the creation of a green bank, which they've done in Connecticut very successfully. And the green bank would be one-stop shopping place to go for expertise around green projects as well as funding around green projects. And this is an area also where there's a lot of private capital. It doesn't just have to be funded by tax dollars. So I was talking to a small business owner the other day, and she said, oh, I'd love to put solar panels on my small business because it would bring down cost. When I'm governor, you can go to the green bank. It'll be one place to go. We'll help you get private financing to do that, and there'll be expertise. So if you're a small business owner, it's one phone call. We'll help you bring down your energy cost. And by the way, we're going to put people to work installing those solar panels. There's a huge opportunity. Here's the silver lining of climate change. We can put people to work. Retrofitting buildings. My kid's school, it drives me crazy. Public buildings, air conditioners hanging out, and all the heat going out. Let's fix that and put people back to work in the process.
We have a question from a member of the audience. This week, Insurance Commissioner Kathleen Hittner approved another round of health insurance increases. The Providence Journal reports that large employer rates will go up on an average of 8.4% to 11%, small employers 4.5% to 9%. What can a governor do to improve the health of Rhode Islanders at a cost that we can afford, and what specifically will you do?
In my software business, I buy family health insurance policies for my employees. The cost increase that we've borne in buying those policies over the last decade, they've gone up 160%. They've more than doubled. It's not sustainable. We have a healthcare crisis in this country. I have very highly paid employees. The percentage that the healthcare benefit represents of their salary that I buy for them is extraordinary. And I can't imagine if someone is making far less, how can the health benefit approach 100% of salary? We have a crisis here, and I believe we have a dysfunctional insurance market. Rhode Island is too small. We have two insurers. A duopoly doesn't work. In fact, it's really monopolistic pricing when you get right down to it. The solution to it, I believe, resides a little bit with the exchange. We, by law, have the ability to merge our exchange with another state. I think we have to use that opportunity to merge and get our tiny insurance marketplace to be part of a bigger one. With better choice and more people, that should help to drive down costs. And by the way, it will help a lot of docs too, because our reimbursements here in Rhode Island are much lower than Massachusetts' reimbursements are. So there's a lot of good that we can do by addressing the crisis that we have in our health insurance marketplace.
No, big key, because healthcare is a very complicated problem. But the big key that we do have to do is increase competition among many insurers so it has a healthier marketplace. If we were able to work with other states to create that bigger pool, bigger marketplace, you will have a lot more opportunities where insurers can free up and offer different types of products, different types of initiatives with bigger pools of people. But the real issue that in the insurance industry, especially in the healthcare field or any type of insurance product, is with respect to claims. We really have to tackle the issue about utilization, overutilization in the claims, making sure that people are educated about healthier living. being proactive on that front to drive the claims cost down. We really have to make sure that as a society, we're taking better care of ourselves, watching and being proactive on some of how we, what we eat, to exercise. A lot of those can lead to a better life where we're not using the healthcare system in a way, in insurance, in a way that we're continuing to see so much. But also, we've got to work with the hospitals because of the fact that there are individuals that continue to use our hospitals as their primary care. It has to stop. There's got to be a way to tackle that problem because ultimately the big issue is with respect to claims.
We're very fortunate here in Rhode Island that the Rhode Island Health Exchange has been allowed to succeed. And I think $25 million a year for our health care for the people of our state is a great deal. You've heard me tonight talk about a trust fund for health care, and I believe that it's essential to pay for long-term health care in Rhode Island. So I also am willing to say that I believe the trend will be towards a single-payer healthcare system for Rhode Island in general, and yes, to merge with the larger system. And I say this because of the past. We know about the teachers' pension system, for example. They didn't want to send the money to the federal government. They said, "Oh, we'll take care of it within Rhode Island. Don't worry about it." And the truth is that we left the teachers hanging, and we left the taxpayers of Rhode Island holding the bag on the pension system for that. So I say, let's continue to allow healthcare in Rhode Island to succeed. Let's know that we're going to move towards a single-payer Medicaid health system for this population of Rhode Island. Certainly to open up competition for the largest employers, but most importantly, it's going to come with a trust fund for healthcare in Rhode Island, and that's going to create interest and help burden the cost.
As a starting point, I believe that all people deserve access to health care without exception. And that's why I'm proud of President Obama and his country for taking a major step forward with the Affordable Care Act. I know it's had its bumps in the rollout, but I think we should also be extremely proud of what we've achieved in Rhode Island. We have expanded health care coverage, and that is something that I'm committed to continuing to expand. I have seen on the campaign trail how many people have health coverage for the first time, and what a difference it's made. And it's really important for small businesses so that we can provide it at an affordable rate, and it's really important as we look at healthcare generally, that we begin to look at how we provide for healthy outcomes, and that we reimburse appropriately, that we look at preventive care, and that goes not only to making sure that we're avoiding unnecessary trips to ER and making sure that we instead are supporting community health centers, but also education and physical education in our schools. Supporting healthy eating, as Mayor Fung mentioned, that's important too. All of these things are components. And healthcare is something which has too often been put into one silo. We need to take a comprehensive approach, and that's the type of fresh perspective that I want to bring to it.
Everyone deserves access to high-quality, affordable health care, period. Every Rhode Islander deserves that. And the Health Exchange was a step in the right direction. I've run into so many people on this campaign who've said to me they had a pre-existing condition, they were a small business owner, and for the first time in a long time they have health coverage. And that's a great thing, and we need to keep that going. However, it needs to be affordable, because on the flip side, and having run a business myself, it's hard. It's more and more expensive. In Massachusetts, what they do is they limit the increase in health care to the rate of their economic growth. So if their economy is growing at 3% over a couple of years, they say health care shouldn't grow at more than 3%. And I think that's a good idea. And that requires leadership from a governor, because first you set the goal, and then you have to challenge all the various players to hit that goal. We know what works. Investing in preventive care, investing in primary care, keeping people at home instead of in a hospital or a nursing home. The vast majority of the expense is driven by chronic diseases, diabetes, asthma. We know how to control that. So what it requires is a leader who says, here's our goal, here's our plan, now let's get coordinated and achieve that goal. And that's the way I will lead on this issue, to make sure people have access, but it's also affordable.
Thank you for the question. This is an important issue, not only for businesses, but for cities and towns. Right now, healthcare is a big driver of city and town budgets. And I can tell you that from the standpoint of Providence, and I'm sure Cranston is the same way as well. So this is vital for us. I think that we need to recognize that with the health care exchange led by Christy Ferguson, there we've actually set a positive example of how to make something, how to do something and make it work. And so I'm always open to making it better, but I'm proud of the fact that we've actually made that work, and quite frankly done better than the federal government doing that. Now let me just tell you a couple of things that we've done in Providence and how that can be extended. For example, we were very tough on tobacco in Providence. And the City Council, I see Councilman Jackson here, City Council passed an ordinance, some of the toughest ordinances in the country. We were challenged by the tobacco industry, and we went to federal court, we went to the First Circuit, and we won. We know that if we can keep kids from starting, they don't have to quit later on. We know we're also focusing on food, community gardens, healthy eating, community gardens which help with our environment, also help in terms of health as well. If we can change that somewhat in terms of the lifestyle, maybe having kids do more exercise, be more involved. The treasurer talked about asthma, she talked about diabetes, some of the things that we can in fact control by some of the things that we do. So I think those are very important issues, is focusing on cost, focusing on how to make it affordable, focusing on conduct as well, and making sure that people realize that their actions have consequences, and we want them to be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you all. We want to respect the candidates' times. They did this last night, and they're doing it again tonight. I don't know if they're doing it again tomorrow night, but it's a lot, and we have more questions than we can get answered. They need to give closing statements. What I'm going to do now is break the rules a little bit with their permission, and instead of asking long questions, try a lightning round. I'm going to ask 3 questions that I hope you can give a yes or no answer to. If that's really unfair and you prefer not to, well, that would be your position. But a sentence at most, and I guess we have to start now with Mayor Fung. A bill to approve the legalization of marijuana crosses your desk. Veto or sign?
At this stage, I would veto it. Just don't have the information. I've got concerns about the impact. Sorry about that. At this stage, I would veto it because we don't have enough information about the impacts of what is happening out in Colorado or other states that have passed it. My biggest concern, being a former prosecutor, is the impact on the younger generation, because I've seen, being a prosecutor dealing with drugs and organized crime, that marijuana can't be a gateway.
Thanks. The yes or no answer isn't going to work, is it? 15 seconds. 15 seconds.
I'll sign it because wait and see we're gonna watch Rhode Island fall farther behind while other states succeed.
I believe that we should wait and see. Rhode Island recently moved to legalize.
We'll take wait and see as an answer.
Right. No rebuttal necessary.
That's fine.
Ditto. Wait and see.
Wait and see.
See and wait.
So we'll give that as the third option. Yes, no, or wait and see. Possibly is the only way to get ethics reform in this state, a constitutional convention on the ballot in November.
Put up the ballot. Not at this time. We have too many economic challenges to face.
Not at this time.
Not at this time because, number one, we have to focus on the economy, and number two, I worry deeply that it will be an excuse to roll back civil rights and women's reproductive rights.
Not at this time. I've already spoken against it because I'm concerned about what can happen at a constitutional convention and rolling back rights as well.
I think we desperately need it now, and I do not believe Rhode Islanders have any appetite to restrict anyone's rights in any way, shape, or form.
I would say definitely now, because we have to change the way we're doing government and restore some public trust and integrity back into the system.
Thank you all for tolerating that departure from the rules here. put you on the spot a little bit. We're gonna, at this point, we're gonna go to the closing statements. We're gonna go in the reverse order from how we started, so we'll begin with Mayor Quinn.
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me back here at Summit Neighborhood Association. It's great to see so many familiar faces and to be back here at Summit Commons. I told you at the beginning, I believe it's important that we have a governor who knows what it's like to struggle and to succeed. And I can tell you that I know what it's like to struggle and to be successful. I know what it's like as a son, growing up and watching a mother sacrifice herself to raise 3 kids. I know what it's like to go through our public schools and move forward and go on and get an education at Harvard and Georgetown Law. I know what it's like as a mayor who's confronted a $110 million structural deficit and cut his own pay because he wanted to lead by example, and then brought people together to really make difficult choices to move our city forward. And that included all of our unions, that included our universities, our hospitals, that included our General Assembly, that included as well our retirees. So I know what it's like for us to make progress after making tough choices. And as mayor, I've had to deal with everything from potholes to pensions, from snowstorms to hurricanes. And we've done it by working together and having the very good people around me. We can do better as a state. I have no doubt about it. We can do better as a state. I wouldn't be sitting here if I had any doubt about that. But we need leadership. We need someone who has the experience to get it done. And my years as mayor of the city of Providence have prepared me for that. I know we can grow our economy, and I want to start by training the people that we have now for the jobs that are available now. I want to invest in infrastructure. That is a no-brainer. It has helped us in the city. It will help us across the state. I want to make sure we attract more people to our state through tourism. I want to make sure that we have the best education system in the country, focusing on cradle to career. Cradle to career, that's what we need to do. I'm going to leave you with something. I'm going to paraphrase President Clinton, who, when I say that there is nothing that is wrong with Rhode Island that cannot be cured by what is right with Rhode Island. Thank you.
You tricked me. I couldn't remember that. Thank you. This has been terrific. It's wonderful to be with all of you, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to get to know us and listen to the issues. This is a critical election. I think the most important election we've had in decades. We have the highest unemployment rate in the country. Our schools are underperforming. Our roads and bridges are crumbling. It's time for leadership. It's time for a governor with the courage to take on the tough issues, to do what's right for the people, not what's easy politics for them. And that's what I've done as your treasurer. The question, we've heard a lot of good ideas tonight, many good ideas from a lot of candidates. The question is, who's going to be able to get it done? And as your treasurer, I've shown I'm not afraid to take on the tough issues, and I have a track record of working with the General Assembly to solve big problems. We thought the pension was too tough to touch. 90% of the General Assembly voted for it. We fixed a problem. I inherited a crime victims program that was broken and neglected. 900 case backlog. We fixed it. The backlog is now 0, and we expanded the program to help victims of domestic violence. I also worked with the General Assembly to set up an infrastructure fund, and before coming to office ran a business that created 1,000 jobs. I know how to get things done, and what that means is getting people back to work. Getting people back to work, especially in manufacturing jobs. Let's make things again in Rhode Island. I think we need to raise the minimum wage to $10.10, but let's face it, at $10.10 you're struggling. Let's have good manufacturing jobs, like the one my dad had. He worked in a factory for 26 years and put 3 kids through college. That's my vision for Rhode Island. Well-funded and flourishing public schools, first-class infrastructure, safe streets, and jobs to provide everyone with a middle-class living. We can do that. Let's get to work and rebuild this state. And tonight I'm asking you for a chance to be the leader that leads this turnaround. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom and Dean and all of you for being part of this critical conversation. I am not an elected official, but I have seen the power of public service to make a difference in people's lives. People tell me every day about the Pell Grant and what it made and how big a difference it made in their life. All because we as a country invested in our future. We have to invest in our people's future again. What I bring to this race is different. It's a fresh perspective, it's a new set of ideas on how we can invest in the next generation of Rhode Island. I will make sure that every high school student has the opportunity to take part in the HOPE internship program. I will make sure that the HOPE Scholars Program tackles the cost of college in this state. I will support a comprehensive women's equality agenda to fulfill the promise of equal pay for equal work, to strengthen protections against domestic violence, and to defend a woman's right to choose. And I will fix our crumbling roads, bridges, and yes, our ports as a Coast Guardsman. That is how I will invest in our future, and that's why I ask for your support on September 9th. Thanks.
Once in a generation, there's that Main Street candidate. I'm that working class guy for this working class state. And I know the types of jobs we need here in Rhode Island. We talk about our infrastructure's crumbling. And the people that I'm talking to are obviously the folks in this room, but there's 50,000 people that are unemployed in Rhode Island. There's 100,000 people that are going to have to move due to foreclosures. And I'm talking to the majority of Rhode Island that knows this is a working class state. Without a lot of red tape, I'm the guy who can interpret projects, put people to work with the resources we have. You've heard me tonight talk about federal inputs of the repaid TARP monies from the 2008 Emergency Economic Stabilization Act. And it is absolutely law. I invite you all to research it. It's open until 2018, these programs are open. Rhode Island housing, for example, we've had 244 modifications in Rhode Island, while other states have had thousands. So, you know, they say the money's ran out. Well, the program is written so that state runs down to 5% of the funds, then they re-up and then run it down to the next 5%. It's a rolling, continuing fund until 2018. So I wrote a letter to the governor. It was delivered yesterday, and so it highlights these finer points of what we can do with repaid TARP, challenging the Rhode Island Superior Court to work with Rhode Island Housing for better outcomes for thousands of Rhode Islanders, fighting for standing for their own homes. So I have an economic plan that's larger than the problems we have. Pension reform is going to create the need for a $400 million payment into the pension system, along with the bad debts of 38 studios. So we need to think big. Speaking with thousands of Rhode Islanders, we absolutely all agree we need extraordinary help for Rhode Island. I'm that Main Street guy who understands the jobs, the type of jobs we need for Rhode Island. I'm Todd Giroux, and really need your support on September 9th. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here tonight to listen to us. It's a very important discussion about who will be leading our state into the future. Rhode Island, you know, for 45 years ago, Rhode Island was the place that my parents chose as their home. First generation immigrants that came from China, leaving their family, their support services, not knowing a word of English to pursue the American dream. And they chose Rhode Island because of the beauty that it had to offer. It was a great place to live. They fell in love with the ocean state, the beaches. They had the opportunity to start their small Chinese restaurant. It's where I grew up. Rhode Island offered them so much, the ability to raise a family. And I'm a product of that immigrant dream where I was able to go to public school right here at Classical, then a public college in Rhode Island College, learn the necessary skill sets, and come back to this great state. And that was my choice to do so. But the problem that we face right now is our next generation are not afforded that same opportunity. And it is a sense of urgency that I run for governor of the state of Rhode Island, because we need to change, and we need to change fast and now and make dramatic changes. We've done that in Cranston with real results, real reforms. I talked about the innovations that we put into our budget, from consolidation, reforming our pensions, moving into private sector benefits, all to help reduce the tax burden while maintaining services for all of our taxpayers for 3 straight years. But I'm proud of working with our business owners, small, medium, and big, to create over 1,000 new jobs during that administration, working with them, partnering with them, so that they can create the jobs. And as governor, that's what I'll do. And that starts with the plan that we discussed today, the $200 million tax reduction plan, reforming our system, sending a message to CEOs here and outside the state that we care about them and want them here to create jobs. So thank you, we will do this together.
I'm fully invested in Rhode Island. My wife Jennifer teaches 6th grade science here. I have a small manufacturing business here, and I have a small high-tech business here. My 12-year-old son and my 10-year-old daughter were both born, and they're both growing up here in Rhode Island, and I want to keep it that way. That's why I'm running. I'm running to fix the problems that, if they aren't well addressed, will ultimately cause my children to not be Rhode Islanders. I'm certain that there are people in this room who've watched their children leave to find opportunities. And that's not the way it should be. I don't believe that adults should leave to their children that kind of a legacy. Rhode Island, my vision for Rhode Island is one of economic vibrancy. We should have a state where we have plenty of jobs and where businesses can look at us and decide that this is the place to set up shop. We have a beautiful state. We have every natural advantage except for our economic climate, and we can fix that. Our infrastructure is a little harder to fix. I drive over a bridge on Route 114 North every day. That's held up by one of the largest sets of Lego blocks I've ever seen in my life. Those Lego blocks were hit by a tiny little car about 2 months ago, and they nearly dislodged from underneath the bridge. The blocks that were holding up the bridge nearly came out, and the bridge nearly fell down. Our DOT needs $40 million a year, every year, for 10 years, to fix all of our bridges that are falling down. And our General Assembly hasn't been able to find that money. I will find that money. Because at the end of the day, we can't afford to have our bridges held up by blocks of wood. That is not what a successful state looks like. My mission and my drive is simple. I want to get in, I want to get out, and I just want to leave this state a far better place than where I found it. Thank you.
Thank you all. That brings our forum to a close. I'd like to thank the SNA for hosting us, the Summit Commons for hosting us, the board members who put this together, especially our president, Dean Weinberg. Thank you to you for coming out. It's great to live in a neighborhood where people care and people vote. And thanks especially to the candidates for sharing their time with us tonight.